Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL. Day 4 with the man Frank Scalish. I believe this is number 153.
We are climbing up there.
We are climbing up there. The shows are getting bigger, but the baits are getting smaller.
Amen, brother. We're going old school, sort of, kind of.
It is. It is a recorded show today. I'm at Santee Cooper competing in stop number 3 of the Bassmaster Open EQs. And I can promise you I will probably not currently throwing what we're talking about today, although I do have a very large selection of what we're talking about today. Something is near and dear to my heart, and I know is a little bit of a sleeper for what you like to do, and it's your bread and butter, cast and winding crankbaits, but little crankbaits,
tiny crankbaits. That is that's going to be the theme of our show today, tiny crankbaits. And just in time for the release of the Norman Deep Tiny N in the 3 craw patterns. And so it's kind of timely. It's a very timely show. And I have a cat on my back now.
That's 2 shows in a row now, Frank.
I know. It's like a monkey on my back. I got a cat on my back.
Now, which one is that?
That's Lynx.
Now, last week, immediately after the show, Lynx attempted to eat a
Staples.
What are they? Yeah, but what do they call those things where like the long row of staples? What are those called?
There's got to be a sleeve of staples.
Lynx attempted to eat an entire sleeve of staples not 30 seconds after last week's show ended.
Yeah, which I don't understand because, you know, these stupid cat's supposed to be carnivorous, not eat metal objects, which is why I panic when she gets in my fly tying room.
But Lynx is still a kitten, so you have to cut Lynx a little bit of slack.
Yeah, I have no patience for that. Lynx is
dogs eat all sorts of stuff, but I've never seen a cat that goes after staples before.
I have not either. The cat was a gift to my wife for Christmas from my daughter against my wishes. Just so we're clear on that.
I feel like if you want to live a full life that just has a lot of great stories in it, you should gift random cats to all sorts of different people in your life.
Yeah, I agree.
You show up to a party, hey, here's a kitten. You go to a birthday party, hey, here's a cat.
That's right. You have party favors, little.
You just anywhere you show up, people don't know. Is he gonna gift us a cat or not?
That's right. I thought I was getting a cat.
It would make your life much more exciting because you would just get people who hate you and people who love you. It'd be 50-50. You'd never know, but you would constantly be getting calls about the cats that you've gifted across the world.
Stop eating my lures. Get out of here. Yeah, she gets in my fly tying room and it's all hell breaks loose because of all the fur that I have down there. So anyway, tiny crankbaits.
Yes.
We would be remiss if we didn't put the BTL 24 code up.
Oh, yes. New code for the 2024 season. It would be the lurenet.com loyal listener code, capital BTL 24, no spaces, BTL 24, 15% off all regularly priced items at lurenet.com.
So, okay, so I have to be honest with you. Tiny crankbaits is nothing new. Rick Clunn used to throw the deep tiny N Norman all the time. And he did something weird that I don't personally do is he took the back hook off of it and put a single number 4 on the belly. Yeah, which I don't do because I want the bait to run snag resistant as much as possible. And I'm a big proponent of not hampering the action on these little tiny crankbaits. Now I have listed here 6 of my favorites in no particular order. And I want to talk about rod length, line size, because some of them, like the deep tiny N, the Norman Deep Tiny N this is my deep tiny N box. And
ooh, I like that. That's just a little one of those little Plano boxes, but it's like the quarter size one. Like the one that you take to the pond that you put your crappie or bluegill stuff or just a couple lures, but you can fit what? 1, 2, you can fit 30 tiny ends in there.
Dude, it's loaded. And soon to be the crayfish colors, because I ordered them this morning. So I take the sticker off the package because Normans are great because they come like this.
Mm-hmm.
And
it says on the front, it says like deep baby N with how deep it dives. Then for those that are listening on iTunes, it's just a sticker.
Correct. So I take the sticker off, and so in my boat box, it's labeled on the side like you see here, and then I have the stickers on it for depth ranges.
Well, that's just handy.
Right. So I know that if I'm cruising down the bank, and let's just say, and I got a map that I'll show you later, but let's just say I'm cruising down the bank, I'll have a deep tiny N on, a deep baby N on, and maybe a bomber square A on. They're all very small crankbaits. But what happens is, as I'm tooling down the bank, as my cover changes or my depth changes, then I'll grab the appropriate bait for that. So I could have, if I'm cranking shallow, which usually is the case when I'm throwing these baits, if I'm cranking shallow, I'll have 5 rods rigged up with each one a different bait on it, and I pick up the one that is according to the cover that I'm encountering as I'm going down the bank. Correct. So that's it. So since I grabbed the deep tiny N, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna take it out. I actually have a hack for it too, by the way, which I wasn't gonna disclose, but
So we're talking 1/8 ounce, 1.5 inches in size.
Yeah.
The deep tiny N. That's the first one we'll talk about.
Right. So the deep tiny N. So this is a tiny crankbait. I mean, this bait is. Do I have a ruler up here?
I just said it's 1.5 inches in length.
Okay, so I don't need a ruler, but I had.
So that's the body that's 1.5 inches in length.
Correct. That's the body. So it's a tiny little bait. All right. So what I do is I will add to the bottom of the bait a lead strip, not heavy enough to suspend the bait, but I'll add a lead strip to the body, and then I put a piece of white electrical tape over it.
Oh, we are getting serious here.
To hide the lead. Now, the reason that I let it up, okay, is because sometimes I want that added weight on the bait because it helps cast it easier. But by extending it across the whole bottom of the bait from the chin to the tail, I don't change the action of the bait at all. And it prevents it, it gives it a slower rise. It doesn't want to bounce right back up. So I could slow roll it. This is not going to work out today.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to lock her out. Can I have a second?
I wish I had some elevator music for this. Frank is currently taking care of links, locking links out. I also would like to know when he comes back about that lead tape. I know you've talked about that lead tape in the past, Frank. Is that the golf tape or fishing tape, or what type of lead tape is it?
The tape, you can get it at any golf pro shop.
Okay.
You could get it at fly fishing shops. It's called Nymph Tape.
Yep.
And basically what the only reason I'm doing it is it gives me a little bit more weight to the bait, and it makes it rise a little bit slower. So the reason being is on the deep tiny N, I love fishing the bait with a stop and go, and then sometimes I'll just speed it up and burn it because this bait will track. This bait will track true whether you're burning it or slow rolling it. It tracks really nice. And so I want to be able to vary that retrieve, but I don't want this thing popping up to the surface right away because we're traditionally fishing it fairly shallow from from the bank basically down to about 4 feet is where I really like this bait. And so that's what the lead tape's for. Now, I don't get crazy making giant hook changes on this bait at all. I'm using this is, I believe, they
look like 6s to me.
I think these are 6s or 8s.
Okay.
on it. I don't get crazy on this particular bait with hook size.
The bait comes with size 6 hooks, the 1.5-inch bait that weighs an 1/8 ounce.
Right. So then these are 6s that I put on it. Oops.
There you go.
This is plenty. These hooks are plenty big to hold the largest fish that I've caught. So I don't have a problem. Now, here's the key with this bait. I'm throwing this thing around anything I come to that's hard, rocks, gravel, man-made stuff like concrete walls. You know how they'll have boat ramps are phenomenal, especially the edge of the boat ramp, right where the edge of the boat ramp tapers down. That's the money shot. And so what I'm doing it with this bait here. I throw it on a bait caster. I have buddies of mine that live and die on the spinning rod with this bait, but I can't get myself to throw it on a spinning rod. It just goes against every fiber of my crankbait being. So I just can't do it. So what I do is I'm using a Powell 725, which is graphite crank and stick. Either or the Endurance or the Naked will cast this bait. Now the key here is I'm using 8-pound fluoro or I'm using 10-pound fluoro.
Okay.
I don't go any heavier on this bait because
hampers the action or casting distance or both.
Both. It affects casting distance more than action, going over 10, but it'll also deaden some of the action on the bait. This bait's got a really tight wobble and a really tight pitch and roll.
Okay.
But it comes over everything super cleanly. So that's my go-to bait for that particular situation. But here, I fish these tiny crankbaits from pre-spawn all the way through the post-spawn. Now, on river systems, I'll fish it almost year-round, depending on the system I'm in. Because a lot of the river systems will fish shallower generally all the time. Now, not when you get, to the big wide Delta, Mississippi Delta, but like the Ohio River, the Upper Mississippi River, some of your smaller rivers, especially the smaller spotted bass rivers in Tennessee and everything. Very good bait. The other time I pick them up again, especially where you have drawdown lakes, is the fall drawdown.
So like the Tennessee lakes, like a Douglas Lake or Cherokee 100%. Or something like that.
So yeah,
mainly Douglas.
Right, because here's what happens on a drawdown. As the water starts to come down, the bait fish push up to the bank and they run the bank. When the water's coming down, they run the bank. These small crankbaits are dynamite for that time of year, especially up north. You have drawdown lakes up here where we live. All the shad come to the bank the minute they start drawing the lake down, and the bass are right with them. As you know from past shows, the bass are following the bait.
Yeah.
So why don't we do this? Because I'm all over the board. So why don't we do this? I'm going to show you my 6 favorites.
Okay.
And they're all applicable in the same situations.
Okay.
So obviously the first one is the Norman Deep Tiny End, which I've already shown you.
Yep.
The deep
1/8 ounce, 1.5 inch in size, dives 4 to 6 feet.
Correct. Another bait that I don't talk about all that much is the tiniest Big O that they make, which this one they don't make anymore. It's G Finish. This is a C76 or C78. It's the smallest one they make. It's the same size as
it would be the C76, which is 2 inches, comes with number 8 hooks and dives 2 to 4 feet and weighs 1/4 ounce.
Yeah, this little bait here is one of my favorite fall drawdown baits because I don't have to plow the bottom with it. It won't dive deep enough for me to plow the bottom with it, and it gets right in that 5-foot suspension zone for the fish. Very dynamite bait.
Now, do you do anything with that, or you throw it out of the out of the package, no lead modifications to the Big O.
Yeah, no lead modifications.
Because you want it to kind of float. You're throwing that really shallow, 1 to 3 foot deep.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a bait I want plowing into the bottom.
Okay.
My next bait, since we're on Normans, I will go to my Norman Deep Baby N, and I just happen to have the new crawdad color here, but I've got all the standbys. That's the Deep Baby N. This is kind of a workhorse for me, because I fish this a lot, especially when the bass are in that 6 to 7 foot range. I'll fish this bait a lot. I have all the other colors. I have Chili Bowl and Mountain Dew. And
so would you agree that the Deep Baby N is probably the most universally over the past 3 decades used small crankbait in the tournament angler's arsenal?
Yeah, 100%. This is probably the most popular, small bait or tiny bait, if we call it a tiny bait.
Quarter ounce, 2-inch body size, dives 6 to 8 feet.
Right. So this I'm doing the same thing. I'm going down the bank. I'm fishing my bank related stuff. I come to the rocks. I'm plowing it through the rocks. The neat feature about the Deep Baby N that nobody realizes is how good this bait will come through brush tops. A long time ago, probably one of the first shows we did, I showed a video of this thing running through willow bushes, and it comes through. It's amazing how easy it comes through. Another bait that I like, and honestly, I've been fishing this bait through my whole tournament career.
Are these straight out of your boat? These look like you just went and pulled the boxes straight out of the boat, Frank.
Yeah, they are.
Heck yeah.
They are.
That's what I like to see.
So see they're labeled.
The daily arsenal.
Right. So see they're labeled.
Yep.
Boxes. Okay. So one of my all-time baits that is really gets a lot of work from me, and it's really underrated, is a Bomber Square A. This is one of the new next gen colors. This is electric shad. This is one of my all-time favorite colors, both in shallow and deep diving baits is electric shad. But anyway, the Square A Bomber, I'll throw this on 12, mostly 12, but it'll handle 14 and it'll handle 17. But the thing with this bait on 17 is you lose a ton of depth on it. So you absolutely want to be very cognizant of how deep you're fishing it. And if you see, because this is my boat box, if you see, that's not BS. I mean, they're in there.
Wow. And there's 2 different sizes to that. There's a 1 5/8 size and then a 2 1/4 size, both of which are small.
Right. The 04 and the 05, and they're both small. Now, another favorite of mine, which I catch so many fish on, it's absolutely ludicrous, is, as I don't want to pull every bait I own out of this box, is the
rapidly shake the entire glob of lures while cursing, and it usually works.
Right, but I don't normally put hooks on them unless I'm fishing them, and as you can see,
you're fishing them.
I fish them. So is the C77 Big O. Ohio River Killer. This bait is one of my go-to spotted bass lures in the springtime on the spotted bass fisheries, especially if it's a fishery with boat docks on it. The C77 Big O. I have literally caught 4-pound plus spotted bass on it numerous occasions. I can't even count how many.
So that's kind of a little bit bigger. So the C76 is 2 inches. The C77 is 2 1/4 inches. It's
Correct.
a third of an ounce, and it dives 3 to 5 feet. So it still has number 6 hooks with it. So instead of it's still a very small bait, but just not as small as the tiny Big O, which is the C76. And then the standard C78 is a 3-inch bait that weighs 3/8 of an ounce. So you're
here I got
way
one.
less.
Yeah, I got one right here. I'll show you. So here's the Here's the Big O, just for comparison sake. That's the C76.
Which is a standard score. Okay, wow. Yeah, no, that's a third of the size.
Right, that's the C77 below it. And then should I get the little one out and do a 3?
Yeah, get all three if you can. That would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, this is really cool. This will give you a really good idea.
You're gonna have some hard OCD if you don't put all those back in the same box.
Yeah, I know. I'm already wigging out.
Okay, so that's the 77 and the 76 in size comparison.
And then
76 on the top, 77 in the middle, and then the 78, which is the 3-inch bait on the bottom. So that kind of gives you an idea when we're talking tiny cranks, small crankbaits, what we're dealing with.
Correct. So okay, so this is going to drive me crazy, boys.
I know it's not going to. It already is. It's kind of funny though. I'm enjoying it.
I know you are.
And we're only halfway through. You got to dig in at least 3 more boxes in the
yeah, but the other boxes will be easier because
okay.
I don't have them. This box is a mixed branded box. I've got all different brands in this box. So anyway, okay, so that was where did we end off on? Oh, the C77 Big O.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, another actually, I'm going to do the bomber since it's right here. Another bomber that I think gets really overlooked is the 4A bomber, which is another smallish bait. The 4A bomber gets overlooked. It's another smallish type bait, but it has the same action as a 6A or a 7A,
which is a big body bait.
Right.
This is only 2 1/8 inches, and it weighs 5/16 of an ounce. So you can actually cast this thing, but a very small body on it.
Oh yeah, it's really a small body. Again, like I'll fish this thing on shallow, rocky areas. I fish it around boat docks a ton. I fish a lot of the smaller crankbaits if I'm on a lake that I know for a fact is a boat dock fishery, because here's a trick. Okay, another trick. We're gonna let another cat out of the bag. No pun intended. But with the C77 Big O and the 4A bomber, I off tune them. So I have one that runs to the right a smidge and one that runs to the left a smidge. So when I come up to a boat dock, I throw the one that runs to the right on the right side of the dock, and it will run underneath the dock. So it runs underneath around the poles, around the poles. And I have the other bait that runs the opposite side of the dock. So it goes under the dock a little bit. You have to remember something. The reason I do this on boat docks, and I'll do it on retaining walls too, so it keeps running into the retaining walls. The reason I do it on boat docks is because I'm not fishing it deep. If I need to get maximum depth out of the bait, you can't untune it, because if you untune it, you never reach your depth. But for a boat dock, if you off tune it just a tiny bit, it'll want to run underneath the dock and still give you 3-foot diving ability.
That's awesome. We also have a day 4 on tuning crankbaits, so you can go back and watch that, figure out how to tune it, whether you're tuning a bait with the thumb, pliers, minimal micro adjustments, have big results left and right. Go back and watch that show to maximize this tip.
Now, I have a bait that is absolutely a money bait. Especially if I've got grass that doesn't come all the way to the surface, or if I'm fishing like 45-degree banks or less that are gravelly and rocky. This bait is out of control, and it fishes really good in cold water periods because of the tight action on it. It's the Speed End Junior. And this bait here runs so true. It's such a tight running bait. I was actually doing a video last year. It was a post-spawn video, and the video was about flick shaking. and I got on a school of fish flick shaking, and I said the speed end will kill him in this situation. So we did the show flick shaking, and then we went back and I did another show with the speed end junior, and I would burn it over basically what it was post spawn. The bass were already moving out of their spawning areas. So essentially, if there was any fish spawning, it was so negligible, it wasn't worth looking for them. So the bass were already moving out. What I found was this particular lake has long flats in it that come way out, and they're shallow flats. They come way out and then they start to drop off towards the basin of the lake, but the shallow flats have grass on them. And so what was happening was the grass wasn't growing all the way to the surface. The beauty part was when I got to the 7-8 foot stuff, the grass was only 3 feet off the bottom. Now I found the bass there flick shaken. Okay, they were the big post spawn females. So every one we caught had the concave belly, the tail was raw, big headed fish, and they were spawned out females, just taking a breather before they get to their summer pattern.
Right.
I started running this across the steep grass, the grass that didn't come all the way up to the top. And what wound up happening was I wound up fishing it with a reel and pause, and they were smoking it on the pause. And I sat there and just hammered on them, and some pretty big fish, especially for post spawn females. So this bait really was designed for cold water applications, but don't let it fool you, because if the conditions are right, this is an absolute animal.
And that is a 2.5-inch bait, so that's the biggest of the tiny crankbaits, the speed end junior.
Right, and the speed end, the regular speed end is basically a deep little end body.
Okay.
And the regular size does the same thing. It gets down a little bit deeper. It's just a fabulous crankbait. I catch a lot of smallmouth on it in the spring up north when they start to run up to those shallow flats.
So you said one of the main things, if you're generating a reaction bite, if you want a tighter wiggle, if you want to be able to burn something in the fall or summer and move it fast, the smaller the bait, the harder it is to keep perfectly tuned.
Correct.
That's just it is in general. The speed end junior is a great bait. If you want to boom, 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 burn, cover water, deflect off, you can crank this thing fast and it stays true and wobbles true.
100%. Now I have to tell you something. With all my tiny crankbaits, well, actually, I'm a nut job. I don't crank with fiberglass ever.
Okay.
Not right, wrong, or indifferent. But I want to feel everything the bait is doing. I want to feel when it comes in contact with structure or cover. Is it wood or grass? Is it rock or mud or sand? I want to feel everything my bait's doing, and fiberglass kind of deadens that. You don't have as good a feel with it. So I'm always cranking with graphite. That's why I like the Powell 725 so much. It's a shorter graphite cranking rod, but it casts these little tiny baits, and it casts them well. So that's the big thing. Line size is important on tiny baits, because you'll run into a situation where when you get to a certain line size, you're changing what the bait's doing, and that's not always for the good. So you got to be cognizant of that. No matter which brand of company out there, whatever tiny bait you're throwing, the smaller the bait, the more it's affected by line diameter. So you have to be aware of that on these things. Don't freak out on small hooks either. A small hook will hold a giant fish. You just got to play the fish out. You're not going to horse them in. You just got to play them out, but you could land them. I mean, Matt, think about the size of the steelhead and stuff that we catch on the smallest little micro hook, and and you don't lose them because you play them out. So you just got to be, willing to do that. Again, there's a time and a place for these baits, and there's a time when they can't be beat. And I'm just going to preface this again. On your drawdown lakes, when the shad hit the bank, when the lakes are being pulled, you will lose your mind at how successful these baits are. It will be crazy. So one little thing here, unless you have a question or anything.
No.
Okay, so what I have here is this is a main lake. This is a main lake map. And if you see over here, you see how flat. I'm trying to figure this out.
Yep, you're right on it. There's a point there. It looks like
Right,
there's
and then
a
another
gut
point.
going in, and then like a good little flat where it looks like it's like 2 to 4 or 5 foot deep, some
Right.
rocks on it.
So you see these two flats here.
Yep.
How the hell am I? Where am I going?
Yeah,
So-
you're good. You're right there.
So that one,
Yep.
this is so hard to do without being
Yep.
able to see through and this one here. I look for these flatter tapering places, but I want deep water access, which is right there. How that little gut.
So you want them to
happens.
be able to pull up, feed,
Pull
and then
up,
slide
right.
back down.
Because what I've known is what I've come to experience is I call it the invisible zone. When you're shallow cranking, you can see the bottom to a certain point, and then you start to lose the bottom visibility. That's the invisible zone. They'll hang in that invisible zone as an ambush spot. And that's where most of your bites are coming from, is that invisible zone. So that's the reason for these tiny shallow crankbaits, because that's where they live. They live in that zone. And so that's what I'm looking for. Same thing if you're going to just go into a big creek arm. If you're just going to go into a big creek arm, you just look for the same stuff. Look for the flat, shallow or flat areas as you work your way down. As you work your way down into the creek, the shallow or flat areas into the creek, and this is what you're focusing on in the backs of the creeks. Now the bluff side of things, you can parallel this too. If you find that when you get there, they're not relating to the flatter stuff, you can pull up on the steep side and parallel it. But when you parallel it with the little tiny crankbaits, you literally got to be on the bank with your bass boat. And if your bass boat is able to get there, then it's probably good for holding fish. If you can't reach it, it's probably that bank is not going to be the predominant feature. It's going to be what's off of the bank if you can't get close enough to it to parallel it.
Now, these are little baits. I throw them a lot too, Frank. I'm very fond of them. Talk a little bit about watercolor, because when I first started throwing them, I threw them on Eufaula in Oklahoma. There's like, man, there's no way fish is going to be able to find this little itty bitty, whether it be a 0.5 or a tiny N or something in the water. And I was shocked at how they're able to find something so small moving in fairly stained water.
Right, because remember, aside from sight and smell, bass can zero in on a bait based on the vibrations from their lateral line. They can feel that in their lateral line.
Okay.
And so they know where that bait is because it's displacing water. And so that water displacement is how they sense it through their lateral line. So they can see it. Because here, let's just be honest for a minute. If bass couldn't attack or find prey in dirty water, they would never grow.
Yeah, that's a fair point. All right. So when are you going to reach for a tiny crank? Is it more so when you believe there's small crayfish, there's small bait? Is it more so when you believe that there's a lot of pressure on the fishery, so you want to throw something smaller that's a little different? Like, what in your head? Let's say you go out there with a speed N or a regular Big O or a normal 3 to 3.5 inch crankbait. What's in your head is going to tick off and go, oh, we need to make some adjustments smaller here that might increase our chances of boating some bass?
Okay, so the first thing is sometimes when you throw a lure out, you'll see bait fish scatter.
Yep.
If I see the bait fish scatter and you can't see the bait fish, you just see it like looks like rain where they do that. You know those bait fish are tiny.
Okay.
I'm going to it immediately and not even a thought. The other thing is when you're fishing these baits predicated around spawning, if you know that there's a hatch, a new hatch, all the fry are tiny. That's another good time to throw it. But the other thing too is I throw it when basically I'm throwing it in the times of year when the bass are generally keying in on smaller bait anyway. You know, that early spring through post spawn, and then again late in the fall when the drawdown comes into play. So I'm really throwing it when the bait is more of that size. The other thing too is pressure, because it's really all of the above, Matt. I mean, it is. Fishing pressure, a smaller bait at times can get way more bites than a normal size lure can. Now, there are times when the normal size lure is going to outfish them. But that's going to be trial and error on your part, the angler's part, because every body of water is different in the sense that the behavior of the bass is the same, but the makeup of the lake or what the lake is like there's some lakes here where I fish here where I can go out and crack them on DD22s, which is a giant crankbait, and then I can go to a lake that's literally a half hour down the road, and if you're throwing a DD22 they don't touch it, but if you put like a deep little N on, they smash it. So it's just there's certain lakes that have certain makeups, but generally I found if you follow the rule of that, you know, pre-spawn to post-spawn and then fall and draw down, you're pretty much not going to go wrong.
So one of the things I noticed when we were pulling this up, there are a couple 799s, but a lot of these baits are 399, like the next gen stuff that you showed also on that. So this is what I do. I have a box marked micro cranks and I got them all tossed in there, and I probably got 50 of them in there, and I might use it 3 times a year. I might use it 10 times a year, but I've always got it in there. But you can go build whichever brands you want to.
Right.
But you could also, you know, the Pradco brand offers a lot of original, like very popular, small, micro, tiny, I wouldn't say micro, tiny and small bass crankbaits. You can build a very efficient box for a couple $100 that'll last you for years.
Oh yeah. Oh,
like
100%.
Yeah, you could do $150 and have everything you need for the entire year.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And here, look, you know, you're not going to lose these baits because
they dive so shallow.
Right, you're just going to go to them and just jink and get them back. So like my this deep tiny end box I've had with me through the my entire pro fishing career. The only time you lose them is if you break something off or you catch something with teeth. Of course, I lost some to garfish in Texoma, but you know.
I've also found that a small crankbait, like the little Big O, you get on a body of water and you just want to know what lives in there and you want to get bit. It is a great way to just put the trolling motor down and get bit.
Yeah, I mean,
it gets
100%.
a lot of bites, and you catch white bass and crappie and perch and bluegill and largemouth and smallmouth and spots. It works for just about everything. I use it a lot, which you would think you'd want to use it more when you're dialed into a specific pattern, but I use it a lot as a search tool just to see if there are active fish in the area, because in my opinion, a feeding fish that's going to eat a 3.5 inch or a big square bill is also going to eat a small bait.
Oh, well, yeah.
The
like
opposite is not necessarily true. A fish that is keyed in on something small will more likely turn down a big bait than a big bait fish turn down a small bait. That's when it's come to cranking, from what I've experienced in my small crankbait journey.
And I agree. And I agree with that 100%. As long as you can get the crankbait to the right depth range, the bass is going to eat it. Now, but you're right. going the opposite direction, not always the case. The other thing too is that, you know, when you're throwing these baits, you just need to remember that your bait has to work and you have to be in the right depth range.
Yep.
Like here, a perfect example. My dad and I used to go rabbit hunting on this farm. And actually, it was an airport. It was an airport for like Cessnas, single, you know, double seated, 6-seated Cessnas. And they flew in and out all the time with these little tiny planes, not like a major metropolis airport. On the airport, they had a retention pond that they had dug out. And so we would go there. There was a cabin on the property. So we would go there. We would stay at the cabin. We would rabbit hunt or we would fish. Now, if you live up here, you know that when you're rabbit hunting, it's November. It's the rabbit hunting starts in November. So you're November and December. And we had a tin boat there, and we would hunt rabbits, and then we would take a day and we would just go fish the lake. The C77 Big O was like almost all we brought there, because they had a color there. It was pearl white. It was the dumbest color I've ever seen in my life. It was pearl white, and it had a squiggly stripe down the side, almost like a snake on it down the side. Don't ask me why, but we tore them up on this thing. And I mean, we would catch huge fish. Now, keep in mind, it was, you know, like a 5-acre pond, but we would catch 4 and 5 pounders on these little tiny baits, and it's November and December. So, you know, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to throw these things. I'm just telling you. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, that's actually, and I was a kid back then. That's actually when I started grooving on the C77 Big O. And then as I got older, Norman lures was a big part of my life growing up. The deep tiny end, the deep baby end, they just fell right into place for me. And so, and back then there was something called a Rebel Deep We Are, or the Tiny We Are.
Oh yeah.
The deep tiny We Are. Those were other baits. Now they don't make that bait anymore, but
that bait is ugly yet effective.
Man alive, dude. And so that's kind of what, you know, my tiny crankbait days started way back when.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so these baits are so effective, and people write them off. Well, that's a crappie crankbait. Well, yeah, we plow the crappie on them too, but if you think that that's the only thing that bait catches, you're making a mistake.
All right, I will say this. I don't care. I mean, unless you're one of the top touring anglers, we all have bait casting reels that some are easier to cast, more line manageable. They're just, you have those 1 or 2 go-to reels that you can cast far, that doesn't backlash, that's smooth like butter. I said I throw little crankbaits a lot. Fresh line and your smoothest, easiest casting reel that you have the most confidence in to not backlash. You get older line on there that's kinking up, or a bait casting reel that casts good for the first 30 feet, but then loses a little. It's very frustrating to throw these things, especially if you're throwing it into any wind. So take
100%.
Your best setup, fresh line, the reel that you like to throw the most, that is smoothest, put it on that cranking rod, and you will be shocked at how far you can throw a small bait, and how you can put it where you want to, and how you can cast it into the wind. That's my only piece on that, because that's 100% the fact.
You're 100% true. So here's what I do. I have, just like you said, I have reels that cast like butter.
Mm-hmm.
And so behind the thumb bar, I take a Sharpie and I write A++ on it. So I know that is my caster. That one it's smooth as silk, it's butter. And so then when I label my rods, if you see my rods ever, there'll be a piece of white tape on it, and it'll say, you know, A+ or A++, and then the pound line on it.
Mhm.
So I could just reach down and grab it, and I know
A smaller diameter spool is also these are hard to throw on like a big winch reel or something
Right.
like that. I like a smaller diameter spool, a compact spool. Even if you can slow it down on a 7, but a 6.3 or 7-1, like something that's a little bit smaller spool that you can pack some line on. You also want to make sure that you have a full spool of line when you're casting to cast that out, because otherwise there's just not the weight to pull the line out when you get down to where you have to have more energy to pull the line out because the spool is reducing in line.
Then the other trick is don't muscle the cast.
No, just a little flick.
Just don't muscle it. Let the rod load. Let the rod do the work. If you muscle the cast, you're not throwing it.
Yep. I like it. I think this is a very underutilized technique that is very effective year round and can put fish in the boat, whether you're fun fishing and you just want something to pull, whether you're looking for one fish to fill the limit out, or whether you want to go behind someone and maybe catch fish that they're missing. It's
absolutely,
it's pretty cool, and it's very economically feasible to
right.
get
And it's not BS, because these boxes came right out of the boat.
Yep.
So I mean, you see what I'm diving into.
All right, we are on the verge. We actually have one more week before we are at the one and only Bassmaster Classic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Grand Lake. Frank and I will be at the Pradco booth with a limited number of color number 7 spooks for Frank to sign.
And Matt,
for the first 100.
I have no idea.
If you're in the first 100, will there be 100 of them though?
At least.
At least. Okay, for the first 100 at least. If you're there at the Pradco booth when we are there, we do have dates and times when we will be at the Pradco booth. Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Central Time, March 23rd. We'll be there for an hour. That'll be the first chance to see Frank in the flesh, shake his hand, share a story about how much you hate guys who can't back their boats down boat ramps and fish too close to you. And if you're coming for the final day weigh-in at noon Sunday, March 24th, also in the Pradco booth. Now we'll also be in a couple other booths, Bass Tank booth, things like that together. And then I don't know who else has Frank. I'll be all over the place. You can follow me on social media and regular BTLs for that. But those are the 2 dates. If you want to going to be at the Classic, get your hands on one of the color number 7s, have Frank autograph it, swap some fish stories. Last year's Classic blew us away, the support for day 4 that we had. And
it was crazy.
We're looking to really up that this year. So any questions, there'll be more details. There's really not any more details to have, but there will be details. Oh, so here's the question. Are you going to bring any random drawings like we did last year? Those were a massive hit for the first, do you have 20 random drawings for the first 20?
I actually do not. I do not. I'll have to dig through and see what I got. If you dig
through, do you think you can wrangle up 20 of them? Because that was a big deal. You got all these people across the country. You have your artwork on the wall. Remember?
Yeah, I know. But I this year we didn't do too many illustrations this year. Can
we wrangle up 20 pieces of paraphernalia?
I can wrangle something. I will wrangle something up. I have a plan.
All right, and then one lucky listener will go home with one of Frank's cats.
Exactly.
Just a random number. You walk up, you walk in, you walk out with a cat.
Probably the staple eater.
Yes.
Don't worry. It doesn't appear that you have long to take care of it.
I would probably give that one away too, Frank.
I know. And you know what's cool about that cat, though? I'll be honest with you. It never leaves me alone. It follows me everywhere I go. It never, ever leaves me alone.
Well, he's a good judge of character.
Yeah, he's a great judge of character.
Reminder before we close, if you want to order any of these, the new code BTL 24, capital BTL 24, 15% off all regularly priced items at lurenet.com. It's hard to believe it's already time for another Classic.
I know.
We got one more week.
The time is ripping on by, and I'm just so excited that because my plan is to fish way more than I did the last several months. I
like
plan
it.
on, yeah, I plan on being on
And
the
then
water.
March 25th, the day after the Classic ends, the new BTL merchandise drops on basszone.com. Follow Frank's social media links, my social media links, and the website. We'll talk about it. It will only be open for 2 weeks. The way that I can do this is it saves you guys money on that because I don't have to do the inventory for it, which means I don't have to jack the prices up for the stuff that isn't sold. High quality stuff. The signature series Frank Scalish shirts in the spotted bass, largemouth, and smallmouth bass will be available. All new branding on BTL stuff, new logo on that, all high quality stuff that I've personally put my hands on and been like, yeah, we're good to go on this.
Yeah.
And then that will be open for 2 weeks starting March 25th. Hopefully the plan is to get it in our hands so we can wear it and promote it a little bit by the Classic. So
Hopefully.
And then you guys can get it on the 25th. Big shout out. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, for staying through 153 of these things. You know, some are a little bit more kind of off the cuff, like last week's show, where we just kind of had a discussion about a fishing trip that I had. Some are a lot more detail oriented, and then some are very bait specific. I really enjoyed this one, bait specific. Good tips.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the thing I like about what we do, Matt, on day 4 is that I want to say we're all over the board, but we're really not all over the board because most of the time on day 4 you get information, especially if you're listening to it or watching it and paying attention, you get really good information. Now, some shows are just flat deep dives full of information the whole show. What I have found is that those deep dive shows, we can't do them every single day 4 because what happens is we're gonna run out of constant new information. So I choose the deep dives very carefully based on the responses that I get from the fans. So if you guys have show ideas that you want to cover something, it could be specific or it could be kind of broad, it doesn't matter. Just DM me on my Instagram, which is Scalish_fishing, with the idea, and people will tell you that I do it. We do cover it because I read every single DM.
You got to get with Frankie. Frankie, there's a feature on Instagram where you can, it's like a ask Frank anything. So you could actually do a 24-hour deal where it goes into your story where it says, what day 4 show topics would you like to see covered? And then people can type in the response and it goes straight into your inbox there. So everybody can see it then. So get with Frankie. I'll get with Frankie. We'll have him do that for you.
Yeah. I need
we go into another
help.
year. Super basic. So
yeah, basic for you guys.
Yeah. All right, this was a good show, Frank. The 6 small crankbaits that you need in your boat to catch more bass. Little baits, big bass.
Money, dude. Money.
All right, this has been another edition of Day 4 with the man Frank Scalish. Same place, same time next week, March 15th. We will be live.
And we're going to have a guest.
And we are going to have a guest. Is that the March 15th Great Lakes Finesse show?
Let me move this pile of stuff out here, pull my calendar out, and go to March.
Is that the Great Lakes Finesse show?
I believe so.
Right before the Classic, where then you can go look at it?
Yes. And actually, there's method to the madness, and I believe it's March 14th, Thursday.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Friday. My bad. March 14th.
There's going to be some new stuff that I think they're going to talk about.
New Great Lakes Finesse baits.
Oh, yeah, dude. Matt, you're
really?
Matt, you're going to lose your mind.
Block out an hour and a half for that one. I think we might be there a while. Those guys are next level. Yeah,
Dan's a good dude, and he's got some real creative stuff. And I have to be honest with you, I'm pissed I didn't think about it first.
All right, we'll talk to everybody next week. See ya.